This video is brought to you by Raycon. Hey all you cool cats and kittens, have you ever thought about how strange fighting games are? If you think too hard about any one genre of gaming, you like to find a ton of eccentricities that help sculpt a lot of the defining features. But ain't it a little wacky how focused fighting games are on combat? Other games have enemies for you to attack and overcome, but fighting games lean heavily into that and make it the entire premise of lots of different titles. I like this though, because they often get really involved with specific fighting styles and being able to master the art of stringing combos together so your opponent doesn't stand a chance. They also have some very strange guest characters. I don't really know why, but I suppose someone out there had a fantasy that involved certain unexpected characters taken to an arena to knock 7 bells out of some seasoned veteran. It's absurd, and I love it for turning any run-of-the-mill fighting game into something that doesn't take itself seriously at all. Fighting games have been around for a while now, and there's a lot of history to all of this. Just who makes the weirdest cameo anyhow? If you need some more cameos to help satiate your intense desire for guest stars, you'll be pleased to know this video is sponsored by Raycon. I mean, I could have tried to get someone else on to help me host this video, but this way, I get to talk about Raycon's premium wireless earbuds and just how discreet they are, because I've been wearing them since the start and I bet you haven't even noticed they're here. They've been here the whole time. Also, YouTube ads are paying a fraction of what they used to, and a boy's gotta eat. That being said, I've been using Raycon's wireless earbuds for the best part of half a year, and I've never been happier with everything from the crystal clear sound quality to the stylish design, and also the fact that I don't have to sit there for 20 minutes untangling wires. They take up barely any space in my pockets, and with celebrity endorsements like Cardi B and Snoop Dogg, if people are able to spot your subtle Raycons, they'll look at you like, damn, that boy's stylish as hell. They start at half the price of any other premium wireless earbuds on the market, but sound just as good, if not better, than other competitors. Their newest model, the Everyday E25 earbuds, are their best ones yet, with 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, and a more compact design. And it's available with 15% off right now if you use my link. Go to the link in the description or just buyraycon.com/rabbid to get 15% off your next order and to get some well-priced earbuds at a very tasty discount. Anyway, we really should get on and talk about some weird guest characters in fighting games. Because I don't see anyone else doing it right now. You can't talk about guest characters in fighting games without mentioning Super Smash Bros. You just can't. It's maybe a little incorrect though, since Smash Bros is by nature a collaborative effort where characters come together from a ton of different games to kick the crap out of each other. There aren't any original playable characters in Smash Bros because that's really what the games are for, which simultaneously makes all of these characters guests since they aren't native to the Smash Bros universe, but also none of them since Ultimate brought everyone back who appeared in only one of these games. Not that Smash Bros hasn't had some bizarre characters thrown into the mix as Nintendo slowly started to distort the criteria by which contenders were considered for Smash Bros. Both the original and Melee kept things simple by only including characters from Nintendo games, but then they were like, fuck it, I want Metal Gear Man in my fighting game. So things needed to change. Mind you, the story goes that series creator Hideo Kojima wanted Solid Snake to be a part of Melee, and approached Masahiro Sakurai with the idea, but the game was too far into development, leading to Snake being shelved until the next one. So turns out, like with many things, we can blame Hideo Kojima for getting the ball rolling with third-party Smash Bros characters, and while Snake's inclusion might not seem too out of place considering the strange places we've gone since, you have to understand how incredibly strange it was seeing a character from a series of M-rated video games fighting against Mario and Pikachu. This is a man who chokes out bad guys and shoots them with guns and blows up buildings and is generally a really bad fit for a game like this. Obviously Snake works because Nintendo downplayed a lot of the violence and restricted his moveset to explosives and a gentle hug from behind around the neck. Nowadays we've got characters from all walks of life and history, and typically Fire Emblem games turning up in Smash Bros as the roster has ballooned to at least 81 fighters, and we're all used to seeing all these unusual characters in the same game. But damn, I am still not over seeing Snake at the end of that reveal trailer. If only we knew then what we know now. For a while, I assumed that new Smash Bros. Characters were restricted by the nature of the game they came from, only to have every expectation undone by one new character reveal after another. And we have Snake to thank for both setting and smashing straight through these expectations. It's very weird to think that we live in a world where Smash Bros. Ultimate would be incomplete if the bio-engineered Super Soldier wasn't a part of the roster. Things haven't got out of hand yet, clearly. To suggest that Smash Bros. Is the only fighting game franchise out there that has spent most of its life trying to throw in new ideas for guest characters would do a great disservice to the name of SOULCALIBUR. Things work a little differently in SOULCALIBUR because there is a large playable roster of original characters, but that doesn't mean that there haven't been some very strange guest characters as well. They always find a way. And this way knows no limit. Whereas Nintendo feel bound by the need to have a character in Smash Bros. That is broadly related by their proximity to a Nintendo game or console, SOULCALIBUR prefers to play things significantly faster and looser. It's a funny old franchise really, because plenty of the original characters are super serious warrior types that have a particular role to play in whatever dramatic story the games feel like telling. But SOULCALIBUR has very often chosen its guest characters by taking blind throws at a dartboard. I love the collaborations of other games though. Link's inclusion is the entire reason many bought the second game on the GameCube, and 16 years later, SOULCALIBUR 6 has Geralt from The Witcher and 2B from Nier Automata. It's almost a place that characters go who can't get into Smash Bros. Maybe we'll see Waluigi in the next one then. SOULCALIBUR 4 though stands out for one noticeable difference to the others. We currently live in a world where Deadpool and Thanos are grinding their way through Fortnite and it feels a little bit weird, but more than a decade ago, SOULCALIBUR 4 had 3 guest characters from Star Wars in it. There's Insanity, and then there's having Yoda, Darth Vader, and Starkiller from The Force Unleashed, all in a game that is some massive amount removed from typical Star Wars canon. SOULCALIBUR's wonderful though, because they actively attempt to tie these characters to their guest appearances, so this trio of characters sense a disturbance in the Force and head off in that corner of the galaxy to find the SOULCALIBUR universe where they do battle against sword wielders with their laser beam swords. It's ridiculous, but you do get to use some Force attacks to spice up combat, so at least putting Star Wars in here has some purpose other than to tie into The Force Unleashed coming out in the same year. I don't know, it's just that putting random characters from a film franchise in a fighting game feels a little bit strange to me. Oh, it'll be made to look mundane very soon indeed. I really love movie tie-in games that don't come out until a few years after. That's if you're lucky. Does anyone else remember the terrible Rambo game from a few years back that took inspiration and scenes from a trilogy of films that ended in 1988? I'm not sure if it's a rights issue or something to do with contracts, but it's kind of hilarious to see a game come out for a film that a fair few people will have forgotten about in that time. Fight Club is a very curious case because not only did it come out 5 years after the film, but I feel like the very existence of a playable version of Fight Club kind of undermines what the film is about. Who out there is watching Fight Club and thinking, oh yeah, I want to be a part of that noise? How do you even advertise it without breaking the first rule? It's a decent game that comes with a fair amount of visual flair as characters spurt blood onto the fourth wall and have their bones smashed for all to see thanks to a handy dandy X-ray shot. But the big reason I'm talking about this game is because you can unlock Limp Bizkit frontman Fred Durst as a playable fighter. You know, a man who has nothing to do with Fight Club. For some reason he's your reward for beating this game's paper-thin story mode, and I don't think I could imagine a better reward. Just why Fred Durst though? Fight Club the video game is trying quite hard to take itself seriously, what with all the blood and such, but includes Dursty Boy as what has to be a joke character for a reason that I would genuinely love to know. Maybe one of the developers had an interest in his music and decided to see what would happen if they pitched this idea to Fred Durst, at which point he almost immediately said yes because turns out he's been in 2 wrestling games before this as well. But hey, it isn't all that bad, since if you don't like Durst or his music, you can now watch his ribs get kicked to shit thanks to the glorious power of one crappy video game. Celebrities in fighting games aren't anything new, since Michael Jackson and Shaq both ended up in Ready to Rumble boxing, but at least those made even a tiny amount of sense. Who would be the equivalent if this game came out tomorrow? Would it be someone like Lil Wayne? Fight Club would eat him alive. Guest characters come from confidence. You probably could have a strange cameo in a bad fighting game, but it makes a lot more sense to push the boat out and go a little crazy when the normal game is quite solid. Put it this way, if Smash Bros was abysmal, no one would care who makes it in as DLC every time. Tekken 3 is thankfully one of the best fighting games ever made, and is perfectly suited for one or two wacky additions to the roster to help prove that the people who made this game weren't laser focused on making such a great game, it just kinda happened. I'm not saying that including Gon the Dinosaur takes away from some of Tekken 3's immense qualities, but including a character who has very little experience of a video game, let alone a fighting game, is a bold step to take in such a brilliant game. But sometimes you need to take a few risks to have some fun. Gon the Dinosaur is likely not a character you've heard much from, and that's because he doesn't have much of a presence outside of Japan. In fact, he has so little presence that his inclusion in Tekken 3 is his only official appearance in any kind of Western media. He's had a game and a short-lived anime series, but both of them never made it outside of Japan. So, if anyone asks, Tekken has adopted a baby dinosaur, and everything's gonna be just fine. Tekken is hardly a stranger to weird guest characters though. Pac-Man turned up in a mech suit in Street Fighter X Tekken, which is also where Mega Man got a design based off of his North American box art for Mega Man 1, which is something. But you'd have to go as recently as Tekken 7 to find a character even half as left field as Gon the Dinosaur. That game had Noctis from Final Fantasy 15 and Negan from The Walking Dead, but they can't compare to this wonderful little dinosaur who attacks by farting. Tekken 3 makes absolutely no attempt to justify his inclusion in the game or explain why he's here, which implies that someone in either camp had the idea and they ran with it, but Gon looks so out of place in the game that he feels like an original character. If you didn't know about the manga or his brief Super Famicom game, you'd assume that Tekken 3's bonus character is just some random dinosaur, who, when he wins, releases a small picture from his mouth that seems to be a reminder that if you're enjoying this video and want to see more, make sure to subscribe and click the bell for notifications of every new video. Licensing issues meant that Gon was restricted to just one appearance in the Tekken franchise, but it made him a more mythical character with fascinating origins. One day we might get another Tekken guest star as obscure as this and not just the pop culture of the hour. Astro Boy would be fun. My focus before starting this video was to include guest characters from all walks of life. Having a cameo from another video game character can get wild depending on the video game, but isn't generally too much of a stretch considering that it's a video game character appearing in another video game. It's when we get into other mediums that things tend to fall apart. Real-life celebrities tend to shatter any semblance of believable fantasy, so they work really nicely as a joke guest star, as does a character who has just been chilling out in the pages of a manga for the past 6 years. I do enjoy this constant pursuit of what constitutes as too far and simply too silly for any game to have as part of its roster. Fighters Megamix was intended to be a crossover fighting game of some of Sega's best 3D fighters like Virtua Fighter and Fighting Vipers, and whatever fighting game that NASCAR car was from. Yeah, the fighting car game. Makes perfect sense to me, I can't imagine why it wouldn't. The connective tissue is that Sega AM2 put these games together and their specialities were fighting games and racing games. So when it came to combining these characters into one fighting game, you naturally get a bunch of suitable fighting game characters, including some from Sonic the Fighters and the AM2 palm tree logo. That kind of explains why there's a car standing on its back wheels and throwing the front wheels forward like punches that looks like some kind of terrifying Smash Bros model swap, and it's roughly at this point where I realised that some fighting games do have senses of humour that manifest themselves in gloriously stupid ways. You've seen people joke about putting a Tetris piece in Smash Bros, and Hornet from Daytona, USA is not too far removed from that. It's inspirational, everyone and everything can be a fighting game character if you think hard enough. And no one stopped for long enough to wonder if they should. This is RabbidLuigi, and having a playable car in Fighters Megamix is the meter by which you measure other guest characters. Not just because of how ridiculous they can be, but also how strange the concept can be without disrupting the flow of the game. Hornet definitely comes close, and you need to suspend a lot of disbelief to make it work, but I feel like it works. And hey, it already has a moveset, so maybe it could become a Smash Bros character one day. And to think people lost their minds over Piranha Plant. Have you got a topic that you'd like me to talk about next week? Make sure you leave a comment about that down below because I'll be taking the most interesting suggestions and making a poll on the next video. In fact, here's one right now that I prepared from last week. I'll be revealing the winner of the poll on Twitter and taking suggestions for games to talk about that are related to that topic. So feel free to follow me over there so we can keep in touch. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.